just got back from a sailing trip to the Bahamas on a catamaran, and I want to tell you about that experience and the photos I took while I was there. Right now I'm back in Utah, hence the mountains, and I'm outside for multiple reasons. One, because I just didn't have the motivation to make a video in my office, and two, because it's a beautiful day, and three, because it's good to get some sun. We don't have enough vitamin D in our lives, and even though I got plenty of sun on the boat, got sunburnt and got some really fun sunburns on my knees in particular, it's still good to get sun generally so that you avoid getting sunburns, but I don't know if it works that way. Anyway, so my wife did the planning for this trip. Wife?
Yes.
What did the process of planning for the sailing trip look like?
There was a lot of problem solving up front. We were originally supposed to do this project in Hawaii, but Hawaii's borders are essentially closed down to tourists. But thankfully, our friends, I followed these people online for maybe 6 months prior. I learned that they were in Florida. James and I just had an idea. What if we pitched them? Let us come to the Bahamas with you. So we basically said, we're going to come document you guys for the amount of time that you will let us. And they agreed. But the planning process, I guess, was the real question.
No, that was actually the question.
Oh, okay. I DM'd them and said, "Hi, strangers. Can I come on your boat?" And then I told my mom and she was horrified.
Now the game plan was to take this catamaran from South Florida to Bimini in the Bahamas. We ended up leaving quite late because there were tons of, there was a laundry list of issues that happened back to back on the boat. I've learned that the seawater is always eating away at the boat and that things are always breaking. The crew on the boat had an incredible work ethic. They were working all day long, and it was incredibly inspiring watching that work ethic, and you can tell that they were enjoying what they were doing. So the owners of the boat were two girls named Steph and Sabine. Steph is the captain of the boat, and Sabine is, I guess you could call her, the engineer, even though it feels limiting to call her that because she was up to all sorts of things. So before we left, there was a flurry of activities, people hopping around to different stores trying to find parts, people in engine rooms for hours sweating. Not me. I would have made things only worse. All right, it is Monday, one day before departure, if all goes well. We're gonna try to leave tomorrow morning, I believe. Today we're doing some provisioning, which is just an enormous grocery trip. Hi there. Oh no!
Man down.
Can't lose it. They're all intact
He's
though.
gonna open one of these and like,
They're all intact.
this is gonna be a fun joke for her this evening.
So we're just taking out the last bits of little jobs. I say we, the crew, and we're just grabbing them, picking up a thing and handing it to them if they need it. Good morning. Today is the day we are leaving for the Bahamas. It is currently about 8:30 and our departure time is about 9. And we are leaving. We are on the way to the Bahamas. It is very tight on the tide, I believe. I think if we were to stay here for much longer, we could have gotten stuck, and we might still get stuck somewhere. Everything's kind of hectic right now, but we just left the dock. Well, this is a fashion statement. One of the reasons why this boat trip was so intriguing to me was it allowed me to immerse myself in the environment of boat life and capture it from more metaphorical and literal angles. I was able to build relationships with people, and relationships open doors in photography. While we were sailing, I kept my eye out for action. I looked for movement and activity, points of energy in the midst of the mundane. I was intentional about including points of context in the frame and also layering those points of context on top of each other, and also layering to create a sense of depth, to create a more engaging photo. Hi there. Okay, we're gonna relocate because it's 97 degrees and my camera's overheating. I've actually been filming at a park/school, and this looks like something from a Tony Hawk game. Highly recommended. This is nice. I like this. It's cooler, it's more quiet, and I have a rock to sit on. Before we hit open water, we spent a few hours, I believe, in the intercoastal waterway going under drawbridges. I think there was a total of 11. While that was happening, I was taking photos of boat work, and I was taking photos of a guy named Jacob. Me and Jacob actually became friends on this trip. He's a rad fellow. He was very kind, energetic, and a good servant. He was always looking for ways to help, and that is a good set of qualities in a person. I found myself often dropping below eye level to get more dramatic angles, and when I worked in the netting along the side to create a sense of depth, and also we had a hand coming in, Sabine's hand I believe it was, coming in as well, create more depth, add more context, and then Jacob in the background doing his thing, looking very focused. In a lot of the boat life world, you're capturing a lot of glamour. In true me fashion, I wanted to capture the behind the scenes of boat life, while still making the photos aesthetically pleasing. And finally, we reached the ocean. Now, I was worried about getting seasick on this trip. I was concerned that it was going to happen at some milestone, and then we would pass that milestone, I wouldn't get seasick, and then the next one, I thought, okay, now I'm gonna get seasick. I kept passing milestones, sorry, mosquito. I kept passing milestones. I never got seasick, and I think that had a lot to do with the fact that the waters were very calm, and also I took Dramamine whenever we were getting close to one of those milestones. I'm very happy about that because that was something that really makes operating harder. I've been seasick before, not good, not a fun time. Something I noticed was that I was now going to be working with a very minimalistic background environment. It was going to just be the ocean. I felt that shift happen, and I thought, okay, what do I do with this? One of the things I started doing was taking photos of South Florida in the background with the boat in the foreground as we were leaving to tell the story of us moving away from the mainland. So what I'm doing here is I'm stacking context points, the boat, the water, the land, and telling the story of the relationship between all three of those things. And now we have another issue, and that is that I'm realizing my camera is about to die. I'm working with a new point and shoot. I'm still learning about the battery life on these things. It did not last long enough. Time and time again, I don't bring an extra battery, and it bites me. Don't get bitten. Okay, where were we? I think this was the Indian food photography tutorial. So it's hard to light curry. It's generally an interesting yellow color that can be a bit difficult for a photographer who's just getting started, especially. You know what, I think this was about the sailing trip. So we were on the open ocean, I was waiting to get seasick, I never did. And then sunset came about. The light was looking fantastic, and I thought I would get a couple of photos of that light. And also the South Florida skyline, because we could still see it in the distance. They were lovely silhouettes of rectangles. I tried all sorts of different framings, some with a wider focal length, tighter focal length, some with more of the water in the frame and the skyline on the top third, and some with the skyline on the bottom third. I also tried a couple of shots pointing more towards the sun directly, with the boat in the foreground to give a sense of depth, once again, in context. I grabbed a couple of shots of another sailboat, one landscape and one portrait, both with the sailboat sitting at the top third of the frame. And then I grabbed a shot of just the water, a bit of a texture shot, which I really enjoy. It's very calming. I love the quality of the light as well. Now, as I was paying attention to what was going on the boat, I noticed that they had set some fishing lines, and I believe something in me declared that it would be a good idea to capture that and them interacting with the lines. I did not do it when I first saw it happening organically. However, I noticed at one point that Jacob had been fiddling with the lines, if I remember correctly, and then I said, hey, can you fiddle with the lines again? So I gave him some direction. Is there any way you could poke around with the fishing pole a bit more?
Yeah.
As I was taking these photos, I worked to achieve an aesthetic charm. We have this photo, which is, I documented what was going on, but then we have this photo, which is much more pleasing to me. A couple of things that this photo has going for it is more intriguing context, a dramatic low angle, and some interesting geometry with all the lines and the mast and such. One of the things I noticed about working on a catamaran is that there can be some visual clutter that you have to work around with all of these elements. In this case, I really like, and I'm not saying I did this part on purpose. It may have just been an accident, but I created an interesting convergence point between some of the lines coming together right behind his head and kind of creating leading lines. It's lines into his head. We carried on to the Bahamas. Nightfall came. I knew that I was going to get up at 2 a.m. because at 2 a.m. we were supposed to arrive at Bimini. I was going to get some B-roll shots, and I thought this would be a good idea to not miss. Also, being on a sailboat in the middle of the night with the moon and the stars is a very special thing. Steph and Sabine wanted to anchor the boat. When they went to anchor the boat, they realized that their automatic anchor dropping and raising mechanism did not have power. So at 2 a.m.-ish in the morning, for 30 minutes to an hour, they're trying to fix this problem. This is a great example of how hard they work. They finally decided to manually drop the anchor and figure out the rest in the morning. They knew that it would be harder to raise the anchor manually, but we did get it fixed the next day. Okay, so just a heads up, I just was climbing up there and I hit my head on the thing and I heard a pop. So if I'm laying on the ground somewhere, just,
Okay, just
help
don't do
me out.
it in the water.
Yeah, just stabilize me.
Yeah.
Alright. One of the things I did on this trip was captured some drone shots, some nice wide establishing shots of the boat in the water. I captured some with the boat pointing away from the sun, where the sun is shining on the boat. You see plenty of detail and blue water, and then I captured some pointing towards the sun where the boat is more of a silhouette, and it's a completely different photo. This is a great example of the diversity of shots that I was able to capture because I had more time to take photos. Drone shots can offer nice wide establishing shots for things like photo stories, and if you can get 2, 3, 5 different types of shots into a single photo story, that can be really exciting. Then you have the SS Sapona. This was a ship that ran aground in 1926 in a hurricane, and since then divers have made it into a playground. And a playground it was. It was a very interesting place to explore. We anchored right next to it, got on our fins and snorkels and goggles, and got our cameras, including our A7 and a camera housing, which my wife ended up having for this dive. And I had a GoPro Max. More about that in a minute. We started swimming towards the Sapona. I started filming some for various purposes, and I started taking some photos with the GoPro. Now, when I got back, you remember that minute that I mentioned a minute ago? I realized something horrible about the shots that I took underwater with GoPro Max. They were all blurry. And I didn't know what was going on, so I looked it up. I realized that the GoPro Max does not work underwater. So if you want to buy a GoPro Max for underwater footage, it's not the camera for you. There may be a workaround, but I don't know. But from what I understand, because you have a domed lens, things are always going to be blurry. Word from the wise. Or I guess I should say mildly educated in this case. One of the photos I captured with the GoPro that I did come back happy with was this moment where I turned the GoPro around, pointed it at myself inside the Sapona above water. I was thoroughly enjoying swimming around the Sapona. It was a special time for me, and I'm glad that I captured myself in that moment. Once again, you now have a different photo that you might, the one that you would have taken, and oh my gosh. I came back with a different type of photo that I would have normally taken, and that proved to be useful for me, both for me to capture that moment for myself and for me to share it. I also captured this photo of my wife on the catamaran in mid-stride going towards the left side of the frame on the left third of the frame with the Sapona in the background on the right third of the frame. I really like how everything came together for this one. Now I wanted to capture the behind the scenes of boat life, and part of the behind the scenes is the daily go-abouts. And one morning I captured Jacob eating breakfast, and I really like how this photo turned out. Captured quite a few frames, like for example one where he was pouring the cereal or the granola into the bowl that he was eating out of, and then another one where he was eating it. I prefer the one where he was eating it. One of the things we did on this trip was a spearfishing expedition, and I went along to document this spearfishing. I captured them performing the process of lowering the dinghy into the water, and then I captured us in transit on the dinghy on the way to our spearfishing spot. Riding in a dinghy is a lot of fun. We dinghied out to a spot. They hopped in, started spearfishing. I hopped in, started filming and taking photos. I wonder about my competency level underwater versus above water. What's the difference? Where's the overlap? Because I know that compositional fundamentals don't just leave my brain out of my ear once I hit the water. However, capturing underwater is a very different experience than capturing on land or above water. Imagine taking photos on land while the land is moving around. You're either breathing through a straw or holding your breath, and you're slowly floating away from your subject. One thing I will say is that my wife actually captured better underwater photos than me on this trip. She did a fantastic job. And this trip was her first time dabbling in underwater photography. So she's kind of a big deal, but I taught her everything she knows, of course. But it was a lot of fun playing around underwater, and it felt like a new frontier for me. I love the three-dimensionality of it, right? You can move independently of your subjects in any direction you like. Now, at one point, I hatched a plan. When we moved from our first destination to our second destination, I decided to stay back on the dinghy while they went out. We're still out fishing. They're over there. I was diving with them, getting some underwater shots, but we moved to a new spot. Don't know if that's important. Now I'm hanging back for a second on the dinghy just to relax and enjoy, put my feet in the water. But also, I assume they might come back with a fish very shortly, and I want to get a couple of shots from the boat of them approaching with the fish. Looks like my plan's about to pay off because Christina just got herself a hogfish over there. Look at that. What'd you just do, Christina?
I got a hogfish.
Is that what that is?
I did not want to risk missing this guy.
Heck
We're
yeah.
hungry.
Whew. Very good.
She did awesome. Super proud of her.
Good job with your training.
Yeah. This is like right where you're supposed to hit him too. Yeah, you did great.
I also did get back in the water and capture some above water shots of Jacob catching a fish, taking it back to the boat. Captured a shot that was partially above water, partially below water of them on the boat with the fish. We then went back to the boat. I captured some shots of them filleting the fish. We actually had one of the fish for dinner that evening. It was freaking awesome. As we were filleting the fish, we had seagulls surrounding the boat almost immediately. I had no idea where they even came from. And we also fed a nurse shark some of our leftovers. Captured this photo of the nurse shark. And we have some context layering and depth with the boat and the nurse shark in the background. And finally, I decided to utilize my 70 to 200 millimeter lens and capture the sunset. I captured this photo, landscape orientation, and then captured this photo, portrait orientation. I captured a lot of different frames as the sun slowly moved through the clouds onto the horizon. I was trying to get every positioning of the sun that I could. What a crazy fireball we have moving back and forth above our flat disk of a planet. Okay, that's it. This was a wonderful trip. I enjoyed the process of documenting boat life. On trips like this, I also learn so much personally. I grow personally. I feel myself growing as the trip is happening in so many different ways, and that's one reason why traveling and new travels can be something that's so good, so useful for us as people. If you have any questions about my process here, please feel free to comment below. I'll be happy to engage with you guys. If you enjoyed this video, if you hit the like button, that means a lot to me. If you want to subscribe, that also means a lot to me. I would really appreciate it. I hope you have a lovely day. Goodbye.